A couple of months ago, we took a look at J.C. Ryle's autobiography, and in that review, I mentioned a biography of J.C. Ryle, and this is J.C. Ryle, Prepared to Stand Alone by Ian H. Murray. This is a 236-page book, 273 pages with the 2 appendices and a substantial index, and also, before we go any further with this, I'll show you what the book actually looks like. It's this nice, beautiful blue cover. It's one of the bluest Banner of Truth books that I've ever seen. And as with all Banner of Truth books, it is published or printed in the USA by Versa Press. And one other thing I wanted to mention about the cosmetics of this book is its unique in-pages. You can see that it has a painting on this front cover and a little cartoon from the 1800s on the back cover. This has all of the theologians and pastors of the time that had a prominent voice at the time. There's Spurgeon on here, there's Ryle in here, there's D.L. Moody in here. So a lot of fun characters, and it's a satirical, secular cartoon making fun of all of the Christians of the time. So that's just a little bit about the cosmetics. But before I go any further into the book review proper, let me first give some information about the author of this book. Ian Hamish Murray, who was born on 19th of April, 1931, is currently the age of 92. Murray received his education from King William's College in the Isle of Man, 1945 through 1949. And shortly after his graduation, he was saved. By the grace of God, he met his wife, Jean Ann Walter, who he married a few years later. And after studying philosophy and theology, mostly of the Puritans, he began his work alongside/for Martin Lloyd-Jones for several years. And it was here at the Westminster Chapel that he, alongside Jack Cullum, created the Banner of Truth magazine. Murray is a husband, a father of 5. He is a covenantal Presbyterian, post-millennial theologian, author of dozens of books, and founder of the Banner of Truth Trust. The last book that he published is the book that we're going to be looking at today, though they say that Murray is still writing today and working on other projects, so it may very well be that he may publish yet another book. Well, if you're new, let me welcome you to Petra Publications. My name is Davis, and here on this channel, I basically just review books, Reformed Christian books mostly. If that sounds something you're interested in, I'd love to have you subscribe and join us. And if you've been following for a while, links to my Patreon and PayPal are in the description down below. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into this book itself. Now, there was something that I had mentioned in the previous Ryle biography type video, and that was that his autobiography only covers the first 40 years of his life. And, excuse me, I have some drainage today. And this book here, during the first 40 years of his life, basically builds and is taking greatly off of his autobiography. It's basically a summary of his autobiography. But this book, however, takes you past what the autobiography covered and goes into his later years, and I'll read a quote about that later in this review. Something else that this biography is very helpful about is that it includes around 30 photographs, some of which the autobiography does not include. Many of them actually are not included. Pictures of Ryle, locations, scenery, maps, and other things that give helpful context to the story which his life tells. This is not in my notes, but the title, Prepared to Stand Alone, truly is an appropriate title for a biography about such a man as J.C. Ryle. He constantly faced trials and strife and was up against everyone. The high church hated him because they thought he was associated with the low church. The low church hated him because they thought he was associated with the high church. His family, less one of his daughters, all disagreed with him doctrinally, and he never was accepted by the masses. So truly, he was prepared to stand alone, and he always was standing alone. Something else that was helpful about this biography is that it has helpful references to other biographies of Ryle. So it gives you a place to go after you finish this one. If you're looking to study Ryle more, this book mentions basically all of the biographies about this man and tells you where you can purchase them, because it gives you obviously the publisher and all of that. So that was very helpful. And also it includes his contemporaries, people who he was working alongside, people who were helping him at the time, and also his influences. It talks about what he liked to read, when he started reading them, the books that influenced him the greatest. So if you're looking to know more about who Ryle was as a theologian as well as a man, this is a great book for that. It also included very helpful appendices in the back, which I'll read about in just a moment, and also an index. So now let me read the table of contents. This will give you an idea of what exactly is in this book. So the table of contents are illustrations, introduction, school days, the greatest change of the event in my life, the church and homes divided, all doors shut except one, place disturbed in Hampshire, rural Suffolk, stepping stone into the world, Puritans at Helmingham, Rectory, Stradbroke, 20 fruitful years, the teacher, Liverpool, standing firm under darkening skies, the last years. What does Ryle say for today? And that chapter is probably the most helpful chapter of this biography. And then two appendices. Number one, extracts from Ryle, which is similar to the autobiography. And appendix 2, Herbert E. Ryle. And then, of course, the index at the very back of the book. So is this a book that I would buy? Yes, it is, especially if you're looking at learning more about Ryle as a theologian, a man, a pastor, a writer. And again, I'll be reading some quotes here in a moment to talk about and show you exactly what this book is good about. And it also is a great encouragement for Christians who are facing trials. And of course, all of us as Christians are persecuted, or should be, for doing things right. And this book and Ryle's life in general give a great example of how we are to respond to persecution, how we are to react in the face of persecution. And so, yes, I would buy this book. All right, well, let me go ahead and read some quotes from this book so I can show you exactly how Ian Murray writes his books and also how this book itself is written. So on page 11, that is Roman numeral 11, this is what I had mentioned earlier, it says, Ryle's autobiographical account left the last 40 years of his life untouched, an evidence that it was only intended for his children and not for publication. And that was something that I had talked about in the review of that book, but it didn't change anything about that book. It still was excellent, it was motivating, it was inspirational. But this book actually was meant for publication, and so it is written in a different form. It's not as personable, but it is very helpful in understanding who Ryle was. Roman numeral 13, it says, As ever, my wife, this is Murray speaking, as ever, my wife has been indispensable, giving his thanks to all the people who have helped. He says, we have read Ryle together since teenage years. I must say that I'm quite jealous, and I also must say that I'm holding out for a woman who will read Ryle with me. Men, you may want to join me in that. It's out there somewhere. Okay, well, here's a little bit of a longer passage. This is from page 90, talking about his tracts, Ryle's tracts that he had written. It says, but even Ryle's extended vision could not have begun to anticipate where that written ministry, begun quietly after Christmas 1844, would lead. His tracts, and then his books, would go around the world wherever English was spoken. Marcus Lone, his Australian biographer, comments on how his forebears in Tasmania at the end of the year, or at the other end of the world, read what began in Suffolk. Nor did language barriers hinder circulation. He was translated into Welsh, Gaelic, French, German, Dutch, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish, Portuguese, Italian, Russian, Hindustani, and Chinese. Had a record of the influence been preserved, it would have made a marvelous reading. We can catch a glimpse of how God used what is written in a recollection of his friend, James Bardsley. Spanish was not mentioned in the above list. Bardsley refers to one of Ryle's tracts, Are You Free?, as one of 40 translated into that language. A copy was given to a Dominican friar, Manuel Aguas, in Mexico. When he received the tract in the place where he had been sent to a race Protestant witness, the scales fell from his eyes while reading it, and like St. Paul, though sent to persecute, he began to build up the church. A Mexican Reformed church was to grow to 7,000 adherents. And another of its leaders, Bishop Ryle, was to speak of how he was much indebted to Ryle's tract, Are You Forgiven? That is absolutely insane. How many languages his tracts were translated into. Another passage from page 98 says, But it was from the Puritans in particular that he gained most of his own ministry. What he had read in Bickersteth, he proved for himself. There he had read concerning the Puritans, all Thomas Manton's works are worth having. Of Flavel, few more practical, popular, and edifying. Of Thomas Brooks, a popular, lively, and practical writer. Of Richard Sibbes, very tender and striking. Of John Owen, an invaluable treasure of divinity. That this school of authors became his regular companions in these years is clear. His tract on Assurance of 1849 was not only the old divinity in fresh language, it was backed up with some 15 extracts from Puritan authors taken from various of their works. And I have one more quote here. This is to talk again about the expansion of Ryle's work here. He says, New tracts also continued to appear during these years. When a list of 100 was made in 1876, presumably by the printer, the total printed exceeded 8.5 million. By 1888, it is said that between 200 and 300 tracts of various lengths had been published, with over 12 million issued. And it is that man, a man who sold over 12 million tracts, that this book is about. So that is all I have. Hopefully that was helpful to you in some shape, way, or form. And if it was, please leave a comment down below. I always love to hear from you. And Lord willing, I will see you again very soon. God bless.